So again, just welcome to the inaugural Game Jam webinar. This is our kickoff event, and we are here to talk through a couple of things. So we'll just get right into the agenda with some introductions from our leadership. So this is a collaborative event. We have Booz Allen represented, as well as Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers. So it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Manjeet Singh, a Senior Vice President at our company, who is with the Strategic Innovation Group and is actually in charge of all the immersive studios across our company, and definitely one of the children of this challenge. So without further ado, Manjeet, over to you.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join us today. Let me scoot up. I look like I'm so far away. Only been doing this pandemic for like over a year now. You would think my setup would be optimized by now, but it's a new challenge every day. I am taking note of the fact that we've got a couple of self-proclaimed geeks here. Ronak, no judgment on you, but Metroid Prime fan definitely puts you squarely in that space. And Laura apparently is a self-proclaimed D&D nerd. So let me try an interesting kind of way of kicking this off. And sorry, just really quick, I'm going to give an overview of the Game Jam before we get into the details, and then I'll hand it over to Khan to talk a little bit about SASE and the mission. But given that we have a bunch of nerds and geeks here, and that certainly applies to the team that I've brought onto this call, how many of you guys are familiar with Harry Potter? Either read the books or seen the movies? Yeah, okay. So the reason I bring up Harry Potter is I think today it's kind of fitting to think of today as the day that you are going to enter Hogwarts to a certain extent. Now, we don't have the hat that's going to sort you by school, which is probably a good thing because I would probably get sent to Slytherin. And you don't have a wand in your hand or anything like that. But the tools that you're going to learn through this program are going to allow you to create amazing and magical environments that you did not think were possible. It's going to, allow you to transport yourself, your friends, your loved ones to the moon, to the top of Mount Everest, to the bottom of an ocean, travel anywhere in the world, any point in time, relive any moment in history. Most critically, though, and really the spirit of this competition is to harness these technologies that you're about to learn to try to increase understanding, tolerance, and awareness. And that's really what is bringing us here today. I think, we have watched, for those of us that are close to the SASE organization, over the past few months, and we've seen an uptick in the amount of both physical and verbal attacks that are happening in the Asian American communities. This has been, a reminder over the past few months, but indeed, this is something that we've struggled with for the past few years and decades. As our communities come under attack. I think a lot of us are, struggling to make sense of an act that is otherwise senseless. Many of us have decided it's time to get involved. We may have attended, some marches, or we may have got involved in some local organizations over the past few weeks, months. A lot of us are just looking for an avenue to kind of help process these emotions. And I think that really was, where this idea was born out of is, there's no greater way to process your emotions and come to terms with something than to explore those emotions, really using an art form. And that's what you're going to learn today. Mike Wicken was talking about before we jumped on here how he was nervous to go get LASIK because he's an artist, right? And that's his main value, that's one of his main values that he brings to Booz Allen. It's really critical, and what these gaming engines will allow you to do and the associated tools, processes that you're going to learn, it will give you the ability to issue your own call to action, to think about these emotions. If you want to, put somebody in the shoes of a situation that's happened, this hopefully will mark a significant moment in your career where you learn to leverage these technologies that have been proven in the gaming industry that a lot of us have experienced growing up to exact that transformational change in this country and around the world. For those of you who are like, oh, this guy's full of crap or he's overstating things, I encourage you to go check out Unity's Games for Change and just click on the games link and scroll through the hundreds of games that people have created, putting you in the shoes of a child with autism, putting you in the shoes of an African American man who's going through a routine traffic stop, putting you in the shoes of citizens who witnessed some of the most amazing moments in this country's history. So you'll see, and this is part of that program, this is part of Unity's Games for Change, you'll see that there's a vast opportunity here for you to contribute to that knowledge and create experiences that other people can broaden their horizons, learn about some of these issues, or get aligned with your thinking and what you think the call to action should be on something like this. It should be noted that in addition to technical training, we're also going to be spending a significant amount of time exploring topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We take that very seriously here at Booz Allen. I'm wearing the Future is Inclusive shirt. It's our slogan. And so we're going to be exposing some of that along with the excellent teachings and leadership of the SASE organization. Now, maybe all this transformational change stuff isn't of interest to you. That's totally cool. No judgment here. I think it's also worth noting that, the tools that you are going to be armed with here will give you the ability to go take part in things like the non-fungible token market space. That is a market that we saw emerge. We all knew it was coming. I didn't think we had any idea that it would blow up the way it did, but it is anticipated to reach a market capitalization of 500 million by October, and that market space is just getting started. Now, obviously, it'll teeter off. Like any macroeconomics, will anticipate some sort of equilibrium at some point, but there's no doubt that there's a huge opportunity there. And these tools that you're going to be learning are the exact tools that you can use to go create the next piece of art that, raises a lot of funds for an organization, raises a lot of funds for yourself. So, I think there's that aspect of it as well. When we were doing introductions, Ronak was talking about how he's in aerospace engineering, and, it seems like this is a good tool set to have in that space. I couldn't agree more. At Booz Allen, we have almost 2,000 people now that are strictly focused on leveraging gaming technologies, modeling and simulation technologies to create the next generation of training for everything from the Navy SEALs to future astronauts to people in NIH who are modeling infectious diseases and people who are working in hospitals working with highly dangerous equipment. These gaming technologies are starting to aggressively pick up in the corporate space. Any organization that you're looking at, especially in something like aerospace engineering, this is going to give you an edge. This is something on your resume that is going to get people's attention. It's still not that prevalent. Hopefully a lot of you have experience with these editors, but what we're seeing is that the schools are still not teaching it to the level that we would like them to. So hopefully this gives you an opportunity to engage in that regard. I've said a lot, so I'm going to hand it over to Khan. Just 2 more points here. You are going to get out of this program what you put into it. This is just like college. It's no different, okay? We are not going to be babysitting you like this is high school or elementary or something like that. We have a very nice program set up. We've put some incentivization in there, easy for me to say, so that you guys attend some of these sessions, and we've got some prizes in mind and things like that. But really, if you can attend the virtual training, the live training, and really get the most out of the technical training as well as the DE&I that you're going to learn, that's really where I think you're going to see an impact there. And then lastly, I just wanted to send out a huge thank you to the Booz Allen Asian Pacific American Network team. You guys know who you are. The Austin and Seattle immersive and gaming studios here at Booz Allen. Thank you so much. I know you guys spent a lot of your own personal time getting this up and running. And last but not least, a huge thank you to SASE for collaborating with us on this crazy idea. And with that, please join me in welcoming Mr. Khan Vu, the Executive Director and CEO of SASE.
Thanks, Munjit. It is a true honor, again, to collaborate with Booz Allen and your leadership, Munjit. Obviously, this project would not go anywhere if we didn't have that support. So thank you personally to you and Booz Allen, the whole team. I'm looking forward to Mike's talk here. I'm pretty sure he'll reference a lot of his projects, so looking forward to that. Again, if you don't know SASE, SASE is a nonprofit 501c3. We've been around for really a short period of time, 14 years. And our mission is to really celebrate diversity, celebrate the diversity in the workplace, on college, try to get the best out of people, through training, through experiential leadership, and then also to give back to the community. And to me, this kind of combines all of that, right? As Manjeet referenced, this last year and the year and a half during COVID has been really hard on the Asian community and really bring to light the things that have been bubbling for a long time underneath. And as part of that call to action for us, and I'm glad Manjeet had brought this up, is how do we respond? So this is a chance for us as an organization, for Booz Allen, and for the participants, those of you who are joining this, to really respond to the times that are here and give voice. We have two tracks that you can tackle. And one of them is, what is your voice? How does the Asian American community bring their voice to the table as we talk about social justice for the Asian American community? And then how do we become an ally in this bigger movement that America is waking up to? So we're really excited. I know that you guys are wanting to hear from Mike, so I'm not going to spend too much time about this, but I will say that just because you're here today or your friends are not here today, please invite them, because this is an ongoing registration. So this is just the beginning of the ball rolling. So you think that some of your friends are really interested in this, whether it's the social justice piece, the gaming piece, the creative piece, making a difference, please invite them to this, because there is some nice prize at the end, but hopefully, as Manjeet said, you gain a broader perspective of the world, both how Asians are in that world, your gaming and your creative, skills will grow through this process. And I can't encourage you enough to what Manjeet said is, whatever you put in, you're going to get out. So the more time you think about this, the more time you spend, I think the quality of the project at the end will reflect that. So with that, I want to hand it back to Brian. And again, thank you, Booz Allen. Thank you for spending the time with us today.
Thank you, Khan. Thank you, Manjeet, for opening us up. What I'd like to do now is, I know we've had one or two more people join as we've been doing the intros, is let's just do a quick round for those new participants. Again, name, school, major, do you have a team? I've noticed that a lot of folks that were interested in joining did not have a team. And then a fun fact about yourself.
Hey, Brian, you might have to call their name out just in case.
Understood. I think that's Ilar in the participant list. I think you joined while we were kicking off.
Yeah, that's me. I just put my pokey IP, whatever nonsense there. My name's Isla. My username, I think, is the Mighty Nerd, if I remember correctly. Might take me a minute on that. My school is Virginia Tech. I am a computer engineering major. I do not have a team. And a fun fact about me, geez, I'm being put on the spot here. I suppose a fun fact about me is that I initially was not going to be a computer engineering major. I was going to be a graphic design major.
Any reason for the change?
A lot of reasons. Part of it was I didn't like people telling me exactly what to draw, because in graphic design, there is absolutely no creative liberty. It's a company presenting a concept to you, and it's a really awesome career, and I think it's really great for some people. I personally like having more freedom to move around and to be creative and to kind of implement my own ideas. And that wasn't really the space for me. I find that engineering is much more that, because it's, here's something that we want, do whatever it takes to get there.
Well, you're definitely in the right place for Game Jam, because we're not going to tell you how to do it, right? You get to use your imagination there. I did see Tiger join as well. Tiger, do you want to maybe do a quick round of introductions? We have some folks on the line, other folks on the line as well.
All right. Let's see. You guys hear me all right?
Yep.
All right, cool. So hi, everybody. My name is Tiger Chen. I just joined in. I am cyber software engineer at Northrop Grumman. I currently volunteer as the national marketing chair for for SASE. So I am from Purdue University, computer engineering. Do I have a team? Yes. Fun fact about myself, I once had a YouTube channel that grew to be over 10,000 subscribers doing art, RuneScape fan art, and I was in like 8th grade or something. So.
Could I ask you to put, if it's still up? If it is, if you could post it in the chat.
Sure. Well, you can see how bad. You can see the progress of how
This is a safe
improved.
space, Tiger. We're all friends here.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Thanks for the shout out. All right.
No worries. Thank you for joining us. Is anybody else on the line that has not introduced themselves? Okay, not hearing anything, we'll just go right into an overview, a little bit deeper into what the Game Jam looks like, right? So this is, as we've been saying, the first event in the summer learning pathway that leads up to the October event. So that block on the left, as you can see, the way we've split up our summer learning path is we've got a whole series of self-paced trainings, which you can see on the left-hand side of that chart, the Game Jam 101, the ideas, a lot of the Unity Essentials training, those are all self-paced and intended for, you know, for you guys to do, you know, between the different webinars. And then we have a series of webinars then that are live sessions where we bring in our own experts from Booz Allen, experts from across the field and industry to drill into some of those topics. So for this inaugural kickoff, we've got Mike just talking about the video game industry, but as we get deeper into the summer learning path, you'll see that we'll be bringing in experts, you know, to teach you about the asset store, some of the other aspects and areas that you'll be dealing with as you get deeper into the engine. So the intention really is, again, so that left-hand side, you know, do on your own, but then you come to these webinars and you can engage with the team here and ask questions. And so that was one of the real benefits of us putting this learning path together, was to help people prepare. And as a part of that, you know, we have all these speakers lined up. One of the ones that I'm personally excited about is the storytelling session that's coming up on the 12th of August, because we're having the executive producer of the Asian Americans PBS documentary series join us for that. And that series just won a Peabody Award, which is a really big deal, especially, you know, for the body of work that he put together, and for this personal, you know, opportunity and setting for us to engage with him. Hopefully will help you guys crystallize some of your ideas for the challenge. I will say, you know, for details and registration, we do intend to keep the website, the landing page, up to date. So we'll be talking briefly about the leaderboard in a second here, but expect to see that posted publicly. We want to show, you know, the top scorers in the summer learning path as we move on. And then the other thing I would say as well is, you know, we do have mentorship and support baked into this learning path. And this is another benefit of having you guys join us early, is that you can tap into these resources. And so feel free to email the sasegamejam@ba.com address. That's an email inbox that's monitored by a number of people with a whole bunch of variety of skill sets that can vector any sort of asks and questions. But we wanted to make sure that we made this a personal and engaging experience as well. So please lean on that. As far as the perks goes, we'll talk through the leaderboard and of course the giveaway of the Alienware laptop. That was deliberate because we want you to be able to take this learning and continue it. And so that was the whole purpose there. And we wanted people to come to these in-person sessions to engage. And so we're, one of the perks of coming to this is that you get double points for webinar participation. And of course, also want to highlight and thank our other sponsors who aren't with us, Unity for the Essentials, Boeing, and Dell. For the prizes and their back office help. So the idea is, right, we're proceeding down this learning pathway. We've got 4 topical webinars and then the challenge review, ouch, just hit my hand, at the very end on 30 September, and that's where we will actually do the laptop giveaway. And then that culminates rather in the October Game Jam itself, which is during the SASE National Conference. Does anybody have any questions about this particular piece of it? I'm just seeing now Tiger's gamer tag, and I love it, the Eliminator. So I guess as we move on, we're hoping to, I guess, have him be on the scoreboard, which if you go to the next slide, Chris, we do have. And so, again, with this, we wanted to add a little bit of competitive challenge sort of spirit to this. And so we do have this leaderboard. And if you registered before we updated the registration info, we would like to get your username because we do intend to post this scoreboard publicly on the web page and keep this as a part of our whole summer experience. But the idea here is if you get on the board and are among the top 8, then you are in the giveaway, as it were, for the Alienware laptop. Okay, next slide. And so on to sort of how do you get on the leaderboard? So this is kind of an overview on how you put points on the board. Ultimately, there are 4 areas that you can engage in. There's the Game Jam 101 piece, which is really just watching an overview on how to game jam, and then you send back in a screen capture with your username for the leaderboard, and that helps us also tally up the score. The second area is this diversity, equity, and inclusion area, and this is done through watching the webinars that are posted. So there are 2. There's one on molding AAPI consciousness and one on allyship. And then in preparation for the August 12th event, going to the PBS Learning Media Gallery for Asian Americans, the series, and watching a series of videos there. They basically turned that whole 5-hour documentary into about 30 learning modules, and of all very individual and specific topics, but wanted to have you guys watch some of that so that we can engage with Don in August. But for each of those, what you do is you just watch the video and you submit a reflection or a takeaway back to the Game Jam at boozallen.com or bah.com email address. And what we're hoping there is that these give you an opportunity to kind of reflect and think about how are you going to approach this challenge in October. So we've got, you know, the Unity piece that's number 3 is sort of the technical side. The DEI side is the real the softer side of things. So for the Unity Essentials, that is pretty straightforward. There are 6 courses that we've handpicked from the whole list that we think will help you get up to speed on using the engine. And this is the topic and the focus of some of the follow-up webinars, is we'll be bringing in people to, our speakers to follow up on some of the self-paced learning. And then the last area in which you can earn points for the leaderboard is just by coming to these webinars and engaging with us. So for the live webinars, we are doing, it's 1,000 points each, and then we are going to be recording these and going to be posting them for folks to engage on as a makeup assignment if, for example, you're too busy. And the only thing we would ask is, you know, that you submit a reflection or a takeaway from the session, because again, we are going to be getting into some technical topics and things like that. But again, the top 8 scores on the board get a chance to be a part of the giveaway, and of course, the higher the score, the greater the chance. So any questions there from the group? I know we might have had a couple of new people join. I see Rocky. But any questions from the group here on the learning pathway, what it takes to get on the leaderboard, and the nature of how we've set things up? Okay, not hearing anything. I'll just quickly get into the challenge on the next slide. So again, the learning pathway is geared to prep you for the final challenge on which is going to span from 2 to 3 October, where you'll have teams of 2 to 5 developing submissions along 2 themes, and kind of mention them at the outset. The first one is really around how do you raise your voice as an Asian American, and the second one is around how do you become a better ally and around allyship. And so they're intentionally broad because we want you to be creative. I'm sure you guys have seen the prizes. In terms of, you know, deadlines for registration, you guys are all here on the learning path, and we hope that you stay with us on that journey. But we are keeping this a completely open-ended challenge, and so the ultimate deadline to register for the competition itself is 11:59 on the 30th of September for that 2 to 3 October challenge. In terms of the platform for submissions, we are going to be using itch.io, and the scoring, we're going to be looking at topic relevance, the usage of technology, innovation, implementation, and overall just communication of it. More to follow on the specifics there, but we just wanted to give you a sense for what we were getting ready for, what we were prepping for. Any questions on the challenge? And again, I know there are people that don't have teams. That is entirely okay. We expected that there were going to be people joining us that didn't, and so we do encourage you guys to make contact with one another and bring your friends in. But ultimately, if you do need a team, we can work together and help you work through that. So again, thank you, and I'm really excited to be kicking this off. Any questions about the challenge in October? Okay, if nothing, did want to now turn to an introduction of our help desk team and our mentor, and just give a chance for you to place some names with faces for people that you can engage. And again, the one-stop shop for all these things is sasegamejam@ba.com. And as you can see here, we have a number of people with a variety of skill sets to answer your questions. And so without further ado, I will turn it over to the crew.
I guess, do we start just introducing ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you don't mind, just a quick round, just a quick introduction in your area of expertise, I think that might help folks as they have questions throughout the learning path.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Jackson Barnes. I'm an immersive designer at Booz Allen. So I do a lot of the graphic design, UX, interface, but I also do full stack engineering in Unity. So if you have any questions with backend systems or front end systems or UI design in Unity, I'm your person. So yeah, thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome.
It looks like Thomas is not here, so I'll go next. Yeah, I'm Will. I'm XR engineer. I've got a weird background in a bunch of stuff. I got my undergrad at Michigan State, as well as my master's. Graduated in 2020 with my master's, and 2019 with my undergrad. But I did game design and development in my time there. Started as a mechanical engineer. I've done a bunch of different stuff. I do predominantly write code and make things work. I also have a background doing audio, as well as some graphic design and other stuff. So if you have any questions about certain things, just let me know. I'm not sure how I'll be of use, but I'm sure I will be. Just let me know what you need, and I'm willing to help out.
All right, I think we have Zach and Justin.
Is Zach here today? I don't know if he's here.
I saw him on earlier.
He is still on.
I'm going to pretend to be Zach. Hi.
Hey, can y'all hear me yet?
There you
There
go.
we go.
There.
Awesome.
Good to go.
So my name is Zachary. I'm an immersive designer at Booz Allen. Up here, I tend to focus on rapid prototyping more than anything of features. I do a bunch of mock-ups, create first passes of projects and features, and then typically work with the engineers to expand on those.
Hey, I'm Justin Wildhorn. I work on the Seattle Immersive team. I do most of the tech art for the team, so that's stuff like scene management, lighting, visual effects, and modeling and texturing. You guys are probably going to be using Blender if you're making any 3D games, which I happen to know pretty well. So if you have any questions in that category, just let me know. Don't be afraid to reach out. Sometimes it's literally just one checkbox that will fix things for you when you feel like you're at your limit when it comes to frustration. So looking forward to the questions.
I don't know if we have Esteban on the line, but as you can see from just the breadth of folks that we do have involved, we have people to answer your every question about Unity. So please do engage. We are monitoring, and we want to hear from you.
I
So
think
with that,
Esteban is actually doing digital twin down in Tyndall Air Force Base for one of our VR projects right now.
He is.
Oh,
That is
right.
where he's at.
Okay, and so that is the help desk crew, and then of course we have Morgan Cinco, our mentor for the session and the learning pathway. Idea here is for you all to have a common face in addition to the help desk and a resource that you can reach out to in addition to that as well. So without further ado, Morgan. And Morgan's my hero because he went to University of Rochester. I'm a University of Rochester alum. I was very excited to see that.
Move on for life. Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm a immersive developer with the Austin studio. I have done a lot of game jams. I really love making things in a short amount of time. I think the challenge is what makes it really exciting. I really love the work we do, and like y'all have a great resource in all the help desk people. Everyone that they've listed is just so incredibly talented that I think these are going to turn out to be really amazing experiences. Really happy to help out, and just please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
Thanks, Morgan. All right. So without further ado, then we'll just jump into our main webinar topic with Mike Wicken on the video gaming industry. And I will just say I'm not going to steal his thunder. But I am a total nerd over some of the things that he's worked on, and I'm very excited to have him here. So Mike, please take us away.
Okay. Pardon my overdramatic intro slide. I'm Mike Wicken. I'm creative director for the Austin Immersive Group within the Strategic Innovation Group inside Booz Allen Hamilton. I've been with the firm for about 7 years, but for the 25 years before that, I was making video games for just about every console you can think of, from before the PlayStation 1 came out all the way up through the Wii U platform and PC and various Xboxes and Dreamcast, and even worked on one of the Mario Karts. But the games that I've worked on directly, this is actually not in any sort of order on the list on the left, but Tiger Shark was the first game I shipped on PlayStation 1, and it was for a startup company. I didn't know anything about anything. And then I went through and did a Duke Nukem game, did a giant robot game called Slave Zero, did the Metroid Prime series, Metroid Prime 2, 3, and then the Trilogy compilation project, Donkey Kong Country Returns. I wrote the spec and sold the spec for Donkey Kong Country Returns Tropical Freeze, and then I got lured away to id Software and went up there originally to re-envision the Quake franchise, but then I got pulled over to work on Doom because it was behind by about 3 years in production at that point. To rebuild that whole team. And after that, I went over and helped a company called Eline Media set up a studio up in Seattle to work with the Alaska Native Tribal Council to help develop an indigenous game capability for them and wrap some storytellers from the tribes into the actual production process. And so I got to go up on the north slope of the Barrow and meet with the Inupiaq and get their buy-in with their storytellers and participate in the Kiviak Festival, which was near and dear to my heart. My great-grandmother was Ojibwe, Chippewa, and so what I've found is video games have afforded me a very unexpected career and life. By training, I'm a classically trained fine artist. I'm an illustrator. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in illustration from the Savannah College of Art and Design. I paint oils, acrylics, gouache, watercolor, airbrush. I sculpt in ferro concrete, if you can believe it. Um, uh, Back when I went to school in the ancient times, I graduated in 1987. We had the first 7 Amiga 1000s that came off the production line. And so for the first 5 years after I graduated from college, I ran an art studio in Orlando, and I would do work for the tourist industry. I did some stuff for the Babylon 5 series, part of their extended universe, doing a lot of illustration work. Uh, and the way that I got into video games is kind of illustrative of a bit of advice I'm going to give you as kind of new entries into the sort of career fields that you're going into. I did not expect to go into video games. When I went into video games, I enjoyed playing them, but I never in a million years thought I would actually ever make them because I wasn't a programmer. I mean, I knew BASIC and Fortran and some Pascal back at the time, ancient languages. And but I never, I played, I think at the time I had Super Nintendo in my home. One of my the ways that I ran my business was I made sure that all my friends had a business card of mine in their wallet. If you're my friend, you had to have a business card because I never knew where the next art gig was going to come from. And one of my friends happened to run a comic book store in Orlando. And he called me up and said, Mike, I had these engineers come in and they're desperate. They need an illustrator who knows military hardware and is a huge science fiction nerd and is really, really fast. Well, I'm the world's biggest nerd. Laura was talking earlier about being a D&D fanatic. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons in 1979. I met my wife at a D&D game between my junior and senior year of high school. We dated through college. Yeah, I see Morgan. We've been this December. It'll be 34 years of marriage, and I raised both my adult children to be gamers. So, understanding storytelling and motivation wraps nicely into a career in video games. So when this opportunity came in, they said they needed an illustrator who was real fast. Not only did I have those things, but my dad's a retired. He's retired now, but he's a colonel in the Army. He was a West Pointer. He was a company commander in Vietnam with 2 silver stars and 2 bronze stars. So I grew up knowing military hardware. He was a ranger. So I had all the field manuals were my bathroom reading growing up. So I knew military hardware, and I'm a really, really fast illustrator. And I knew technical perspective real well. I can draw 2-point perspective with ink with no guidelines, just native, really fast. So I took the skills that I had, and when I went to interview, I had crafted my portfolio towards what they wanted to see. And they saw it and they're like, oh, this is exactly what we need. That was the first time I made an opportunity for myself to get an entry into this new career. Part of that process was not knowing what I was getting into, which all of you will experience sooner or later. Within 3 months, I had worked myself out of a job. I had illustrated everything you could illustrate for the game. I had done 311 by 17 pieces of art detailing everything that you could possibly make in a PlayStation 1 game, which the resolution was 320 by 240. So, stone knives and bear skins. And then I realized that I wouldn't have anything left to do for the next year of production unless I figured it out. So I taught myself how to 3D model using 3D Studio Release 3 way before Max came out. I taught myself how to make texture maps. I taught myself how to script. I taught myself the basics of programming. I taught myself audio design. I taught myself script writing. And I taught myself game design. And because we had 7 people on our team, including the 3 partners who started the studio. And it's good that I did, because Sony came in and they were funding our startup to check on how we were doing. And while my bosses were gone talking with Sony in California, I designed the rest of the game. I said, well, this was behind schedule. My boss was supposed to be the lead designer, and he didn't have anything to show for it. So while they're gone, I'm like, I'm just going to take a stab at it, and I'm going to design this game. and I built out all the levels. So they came back in a panic. Sony came with us back to the studio. They're coming in a few hours to see what we've got, and we've got nothing. I'm like, no, you have a game. And they just stopped. They said, what? And I showed them. Then they went in their office and they came back out. They said, Mike, you're now our lead designer. And that's how I became a lead designer. It wasn't because I went to school for it. It wasn't because it was what I wanted to do. It was because I took the opportunity and seized the initiative to solve a problem. And that was before YouTube, long before YouTube. No one taught those things. And I'm not especially brilliant. I'm not super bright. I'm not some genius or anything. I'm just hard-headed, right? And I'm not scared of anything. And if I can do that, you guys, with the tools that you've got at your fingertips that will cost you nothing. There's Blender and Unity and Unreal and all this sort of stuff. You have a multiplicity of tools that you can use. GIMP instead of Photoshop, it's a perfectly acceptable alternative. You can make anything that you like. And then if we look at my career, I went from that to Accolade, which became Atari, doing games for them. Then I went to Nintendo, which was amazing. I was there for almost 12 years. Originally, I was hired into, and this is actually a very good restatement of kind of my thesis on how to make a career for yourself. And it applies, I think, for everything that you do, whether you're going to be an engineer or an aeronautical engineer or whatever. I was originally hired in to do an original IP game for Nintendo, which was your hero was going to be an alien raised by humans who was the sole survivor of the saucer crash at Roswell. And you were raised to fight the invading aliens of your own race, right? And we had these secret bases on top of mesas in Arizona and all this stuff and flying saucers and this really cool design for your character. And there were a few problems with it at the time. We had a team that was making an engine, and this engine was supposed to run my first-person shooter. It was supposed to run a football game. It was supposed to run a car combat game, a fantasy RPG, and then yet another unnamed and undecided game which had yet to be determined. The engine team was already a year and a half behind schedule when I was hired in. They didn't tell me that when I took the job. And they believed that a game designer would draw out and write out the game design and they would hand it to a programmer to implement, which was crazy, which is madness. So I got our engineers to split the code, branch the code off, and we made our own editor that would allow us to create gameplay and push it out to the prototype GameCube hardware. And we couldn't get any of the other teams to buy into this. They're like, no, we don't want to do that. We'll just go with our current plan. And none of the other teams had anything that was playable. None of them had anything that was demonstrable. They couldn't show a tool chain pushing out, and they didn't have designers creating content. Well, lo and behold, Nintendo showed up out of the blue. Didn't tell anyone they were coming. And said, we want to see every game that we've been paying you these millions of dollars to build. And we want you to show us your gameplay and designs. Well, by that point, I had graph papered a map of the entire game, and it took up, I guess there were 20 by 24 sheets of graph paper with 8 squares per inch, and I had 30 of those filled with maps that I'd drawn out and a 300-page game design document. But none of that mattered. What really mattered was I had a complete level that I had built in 3ds Max, exported with enemies, that was playable. So when Nintendo showed up, and this was Mr. Iwata, this was Shigeru Miyamoto, who total panic. He's like the godfather of video games. He knows more about it than any of us ever will. They all showed up and wanted to see our tool chain and how everything worked. And so they came to my desk, and me and my fellow designer, Carl, we sat there, and Carl had been doing the front end and player package, and I had been doing all the AI design and level design and development. I showed them how we scripted gameplay and pushed it out GameCube and showed them everything. And they went, huh. And then they went back to our leadership into a meeting. And then they came back and said, Mike and Carl, would you come into the meeting room with us? And we went in and we're like, oh, are we in trouble? You know, and they're like, we're really impressed. Your thoughts on gameplay are exactly the way that Nintendo thinks about gameplay. We would like you to make Metroid. And at first we were like, so you say you like what we're doing, but you want us to make a side-scrolling jumping puzzle game. Because we were making a first-person shooter at the time. We're trying to understand. I mean, we're excited that they wanted to give us this big franchise, but we were also a little bit hurt because it wasn't the game that we were planning on making. And they, no, we love what you're doing. We just want you to make this game into Metroid. And we're like, oh. And then we got into the bones of it, and Miyamoto-san could clearly see how it would all work. And as it turns out, one of the enemies that we had built to test it out, he loved. It was the little parasite aliens that you see in the very first Space Pirate Frigate in Metroid Prime 1. That's actually a legacy from the game before Metroid. He loved that little guy. He said, we should be using it everywhere. So we did. And it was the fact that we took the initiative to solve the problem that got us that opportunity with Miyamoto-san, because they shut down all the other teams. We had 150 developers on staff. We dropped to 35. And we worked our tails off getting it ready, and we pulled it off. And then we, of course, did the sequels 2 and 3, and now 4 is finally in production. And 2 of the designers that I trained on Metroid Prime 3 are still there, and 1 from Metroid Prime 2 is still there. So they understand everything there is about Metroid Prime. They're making the sequel now, and it'll be great. But it's all about taking those opportunities to solve problems that you see ahead of everybody else and taking the personal initiative and responsibility to do it. That doesn't mean overriding other people, but that means if you see a problem and you think you can solve it, don't be bashful about solving it. And it got me to work with Miyamoto-san, who is, I always jokingly call him the game pope, because he is like, he knows more about game design and development than any of us ever will. And he's just the nicest guy. He's not egotistical at all. He's sold more games than any of us ever will. I mean, I've sold about 35 million games, I guess. I've got 2 in the Smithsonian Art Museum, and a couple BAFTA awards. But that's chicken feed compared to some of these people at Nintendo. And it was just really a pleasure to be able to go. I'd go over to Kyoto and meet with them. And when they turned over Donkey Kong Country Returns to us, they said we wanted to do a new, reinvigorate Donkey Kong. None of us had ever made a game like that before. None of us had ever made a side-scrolling jumping puzzle game. So we had to do it from scratch. And we did it in 20 months, rebuilding the engine to format it and doing all the AI design, which was another opportunity. I mean, I'd done all the AI design for the Metroid Prime series and actually all the games I've ever done. I've done all the finite state machine designs and swarm AIs and all that stuff. But doing side-scrolling jumping puzzle games, we actually took one of a good friend of mine, Akintunde Omatuwaju. He's was our AI engineer. He and I built a rapid prototyping system so that by the time Donkey Kong came out, we had 125 enemies in the game, not counting bosses. So we had more than one unique enemy per level of the game, which was our goal. And we did it not because we couldn't have done it the old way, but because we wanted to push the envelope and do something better. And that's kind of been my byword from a game development standpoint all along. The industry as a whole has really changed radically in the 3 decades that I've kind of been involved with it. It went from very small teams of talented individuals who wore multiple hats. Then it went to this point where you had almost everyone had big teams. Everyone built their own engines. There was a lot of specialization going on. we had lots of times where we would have a person full time who just did 256 by 256 pixel texture maps. And that was like the whole middle of that span. And then we saw a maturation in tools and technology, particularly engines like Unity and Unreal, and to a lesser extent, Lumberyard, if they ever figure that out. It's tools that are user-friendly, user-centric, and allow you to manipulate three-dimensional data easily, right, with small teams. So now we're almost back. Most teams are very small, right? Most teams are making stuff for mobile, or they're making small stuff for Steam, and working on the edges because it's easy to get together a bunch of your friends and create a project. And it's not just game projects, it's social learning, it's education, it's everything that you can possibly think of. One of the people who are going to be supporting this effort, Esteban Zaldivar, he's making a game in Unity right now about monarch butterflies. And it's fantastic. And he's just doing it all himself. You have this opportunity in front of you to take these tools and do transcendent things in a way that hasn't been done before, and very inexpensively, which is tremendous. And you don't have to wait. You can go to YouTube and you can go to the guides provided by Unity and go through that process. And then, of course, you can reach out to us, our mentors, and we can help you with little tricks and edges that'll make the difference. And this is going to be the very common moving into the future, simply because we can do things with visualization. And Manjeet was alluding to this earlier. We can visualize anything. If in the future, when you go to take history, you can stand on the fields of Waterloo, watch the grass wave as the French cannons ripple fire on the ridge. You'll be able to stand there on the decks of the Bonhomme Richard as it engages the British, at sea. The Barbary Corsairs, watch the pyramids be built, and stand there with people moving around speaking in the native languages. Those will be normal tools. You'll be able to learn languages by being on the streets of Seoul, and talking to AIs who are natural speakers. These are all things that are going to be commonplace within the next 10 years. And these will all be built on the backs of the tools that we right now use for entertainment. And so by taking the opportunity to actually participate in these game jams and flex a little bit with these tools and play around with them and have fun, you're going to have a leg up on everybody who's going to be exploring this space in the decades leading from now, because it's here forever. This sort of thought process and learning and ways of learning technology and ways of taking advantage of technology is only going to get easier and faster from here on out. And it's those fundamentals that you learn that'll carry you through, and also what you bring from your own personal interests and lives. With me, I brought my military experience, my art experience, my general nerdiness, and the fact that I was an artist, and I parlayed it into a career in game development that has taken me all over the world and got to meet and work with some amazing and unique people that I never in a million years thought I would, including people like Manjeet and Morgan, and it's not the people that you think that are going to make the difference in your life. It's the people that take time to help you solve those problems, and the people who you surround yourself with. That's the biggest thing. Surround yourself with people who will help pick you up, dust you off, point you in the right direction, and send you on your merry way. And I guess with that, I'd love to take some questions from everyone about game development, game design. Pick my brain, and also encourage you. I assume you all have LinkedIn accounts. Please don't hesitate to reach out to connect to me on LinkedIn. I'm here as a resource for you. Questions?
Thanks, Mike. I did have one question to kick things off from Laura,
Okay.
Which is, what edition of D&D did you grow up on?
Well, I started with AD&D in 1979. I was stationed at Fort Buchanan, Puerto Rico. I was a freshman in high school. And a friend of mine, his uncle had sent him the Dungeon Master's Guide. And we freaked out because the original DM's guide had the monster manual and everything in the back of it. So you could actually run something as long as we could figure out the characters and stuff, we could actually do something with that. So I wrote TSR and I said, "Hey TSR, I'm this high school kid. This D&D looks really cool." So they sent me a big manila envelope with 300 catalogs, said hand them out to all your friends, and sent me a set of dice and the basic set. And I was hooked, right? So me and all my friends, I played in Puerto Rico, and then I moved to Virginia. We went to Fort Monroe and then Fort Eustis, and I fell in with a gaming group with a good friend of mine, Masahiro Kamei, and all those guys, and two gals, one of whom would end up becoming my girlfriend and later became my wife. But yeah, I skipped second edition. I went to third edition with so-so, and then picked up fourth edition to play with my kids. And my daughter uses it as a litmus test for her boyfriends, whether they're nerdy enough for her. And now she's engaged, and he's a game player, so I approve. Next question. Anything?
Hi, Mike. This is Tiger on the line.
Hey, Tiger.
My question is, as you navigate different size organizations, what was your learned philosophy in negotiating conflicting creative direction?
You have to be sensitive. Leadership has certain opinions, and that's the prerogative of leadership, right? So sometimes, if they're receptive, you can actually kern the kind of results that you want to get by having a negotiation philosophy. Sometimes they come in with a very specific thing, and you do what they say. I've been pretty fortunate most times. I think the time I had the least control was probably at id Software and to some extent Accolade. Accolade, what we didn't know was that their corporate leadership was actually secretly trying to sell the company. And so they would make what we consider to be arbitrary creative changes in the products that we were working on without telling us why. And it was to make themselves more attractive from a marketing standpoint to potential buyers, right? And it impacted us. We were doing a giant robot game called Slave Zero, and we were supposed to have a certain amount of time to develop it. And then suddenly they said, "Oh, we're taking away your last 6 months of production, and you have to make another version," because originally it was a PC game, "and you have to make another version for the Dreamcast, and the Dreamcast version can't be any different than the PC version. And we're not telling you why. This is just what you're going to do. And if you don't like it, you can leave." And so all my senior programmers quit within 3 days. They all left. And so basically a designer and I chopped apart the entire game into 1/4 size sections so it would fit inside the RAM for the Dreamcast. And we had to stop production on our multiplayer component. We lost all of our tuning and polish phase to finish up our AIs. And we chopped the game down to about half the size that we had originally planned and got it out the door on time. Now, that was the worst case. That was just a total crash and burn. The only good thing is that we shipped the game and it made a profit, which in the end is the single most important thing you can do. It's more important that you ship something and it be solid than it necessarily be your magnum opus, because that's a trap. Just make it the best of your ability, make good decisions, plan ruthlessly, get everyone on board and execute. And it also helps when you're working from creative direction if your team has a sense of ownership on it. And this is a critical thing when you're working with creatives. If you're surrounded by creatives, everyone's ego gets in the way because everyone thinks, "Oh, my idea is the best." Well, there's some truth in that, right? So, and this is kind of illustrative, and I'm sorry about going down a rabbit hole in this, but I think it's critically important. So I'm an artist, right? So if I do an AI design and I go to the artist who's going to be building this model or the concept artist, and I hand him a drawing with what's in my head, that's what I'm going to get, right? I'm the lead, so he's going to go, "Oh, Mike wants this thing." Mike doesn't want this thing. Mike was trying to show you what was in his head, not necessarily what you should be doing, right? So by doing that, I'm trapping that artist and I'm taking away his agency. So what I would do is I would take a piece of copy paper and a big fat Sharpie, and I would give myself 15 seconds to draw a general shape of what was in my head. And then I would prototype with boxes and stuff to make sure that the gameplay that I wanted was what I wanted. And then I would gather the artists and programmer and animator and stuff, and I would get them together, and it's like, this is what I was thinking, and this is what he's going to do, and I would show that to him. But I'm like, all I know is I was thinking he might be a lizard, or he might be a, whatever. And then I would release them, and they would have a set amount of time per AI to figure out themselves, and they would come back with the greatest things I would never have thought of, right? And so by the end of that, every single person who worked on that game could honestly and truly say that is my game. Not Mike Wicken's game, but my game. And the first game I ever released was called Tiger Shark on the PlayStation 1. And my team, there's a secret hidden credits in it. If you do a certain button press during the credit roll, there's a secret piratically themed credit roll that's headlined Mike Wicken's Tiger Shark. Now, while that was a huge compliment they paid me, the problem was it was my game. I did half the 3D models. I did all the game design. I did the concept art. I did all the gameplay tuning. I wrote the scripts. I hired the voiceover people. I hired the attorneys that we had for the firm. And I did all the sound editing. Right? So that was bad, right? Because the flaws in the game are my flaws. It was my first game that I shipped, and it's awful. It's an awful, awful game. No one should play it, right? But it's the game I'm proudest of only because I had to learn all this stuff, not because it was a good game. And so it's always better if everyone has agency and everyone has buy-in and understands that you've got your heart in the right place as far as their participation. Once you get that down and everyone understands that, your job becomes 100% easier. Did that answer sufficiently?
Oh yeah, no, 100% agree.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Questions?
Mike, I had a question. So I've been playing through Super Metroid for the SNES recently. Like it has a great sense of exploration, platform, and whatnot. And I can tell. I feel like Metroid Prime took a lot of inspiration from that game.
Oh
I
yeah.
know Metroid Prime was like the first 3D Metroid game. So I was wondering if like you, yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Carl and I sat down and played that game from tip to toe. The week after Miyamoto-san gave us the gig, we played it 3 or 4 times straight, right through. Because one of the things that I've figured out as a game designer is most games that fail or run over is because the game designer trying to cram too much stuff in, right? Stuff that is not supportive of what the core game is about. So when I design a game, I pick 2 or 3 pillars that the whole game is about, right? And if there's something that's going to go into that game, it has to support 2 of those 3 pillars, right? Has to. If it doesn't, it does not go in. And if I'm trying to shoehorn it in, saying, no, it really kind of supports that, it's the job of everyone else to say, Mike, you're full of it. We should not put that in, right? And because I'm ruthless about that. So when we looked at Super Metroid, we were like, what is this game about? It's not about being a side scroller at all. It's about exploration and loneliness, right? At its core, the reason that Metroid has this sort of kind of ethos and mystique about it is because you really are desperately alone in a hostile world full of things that are trying to kill you. And so you make up a mythology in your head about all this stuff. Every person who played those games, they built this whole kind of ethos, ecosystem in their head. They became a participant in the game. So we're like, well, how do we do that? And if you notice in the GameCube version of the game, the controls are not typical first-person shooter console controls. You know, the tank controls that you see for Halo and stuff. The controls that we made were about jumping and exploration, right? That was the first thing we had to do because we had to make sure that when I was running across a room, that was a fun experience. Without anything in there to shoot at you or cause a threat, I had to have the act of moving across a space be enriching, so that if you're exploring a space and you see this mushroom vibrating on the thing, or you see, you know, all those, you're like, whoa, what is that? You know, and it feels alien and you feel lonely. And then the third pillar is the agency of the player, right? Which is one of the reasons why we had all the story be, at least in Metroid Prime 1 and 2, all the story were in scans, right? Because we wanted the player to explore the story, right? We didn't want a cinematic to happen and tell you all the things, right? We wanted you to live it and experience it. And that also dictated to us how we constructed the physicality of the games, right? We did not want a load screen except at the very beginning. We wanted the potential to be for you to log in, sit down in front of the game, and stop when you finish the game as one single experience, which is crazy because it's like a 22-hour, 24-hour game. But that was the idea, right? So we built our whole structure of the system to hide all of our loads. Whenever you shoot a door, we're actually doing a whole Rube Goldberg puzzle sequence in the background, dumping stuff and adding stuff. Dun, 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 dun. All these switchers are throwing, right? And so when the door opens, we've just streamed in everything past the door. You know, and back then on a GameCube, that was some crazy stuff, right? Nowadays you can stream stuff, whatever, dump it, stream it, whatever. Back then, it was a huge endeavor, and we hand scripted everything. Every single thing in there was completely hand built and hand scripted. So when you picked up something in that game, it sent messages throughout the whole ecosystem of the game as invisible ripples that changed the state and fabric of the entire game. So anyway, that's, yes, Super Metroid was our inspiration because we felt that most ideally captured what it was to be Metroid.
That's great. Yeah, it seems like those pillars you were talking about are a great way to quality control and just make sure that everything goes in the game is like
it's all about
top-notch. Yeah,
it's all about scheduling, and it's all about the game fails that I've seen. The biggest game fails in my career is usually when a lead designer is saying, "This will be my greatest so and so." If you're ever on a project where someone says this is going to be my greatest thing, just leave. Go find something else to do. It's almost always a death march, and it never ends well.
In 2 words, I'll give Mike another thing to talk about off that point. Star Citizen.
No, we're not going to go down the Star Citizen rabbit hole.
We don't have 3 hours?
No, we don't have 3 hours. I did invest in 2013. I still get in and play. I know some people on the team. It's what happens when you don't design and you don't hold your production team, and you don't give them agency. You know, Chris doesn't, and I'm not going to go too far down the hole in this, but Chris Roberts does not let his leads make decisions, right? His art lead is not an art lead. His design lead is not a design lead, because he'll step in and override him for however he feels that week. And that's why the game that was supposed to take 3 years is now in year 8 of production. And they've got at least 2-3 more years of production, maybe more, before they actually hit a deployable state, which is crazy town. I like shipping games and moving to the next game. And also, this is important. This is one last thing. I'll go on this. You owe the people on your team a product out the far end in a timely fashion, right? Because their resume and their career history is dictated by how much stuff they do, right? And if you're an incompetent leader and you're not shipping stuff and it's going 8 years, they're not going to have anything on their resume for 8 years. And if your game turns out bad at the end, you've destroyed their career. And those are humans. You owe them your best. And so be conscientious of the people around you about getting stuff done. Next question.
Hey, all. So I know we're at about time. Mike, and there is one more question from Laura that's in the chat. If folks are okay staying an extra couple of minutes, I mean, I think this is a really good question related to the challenge. And then we just have a couple of reminders on the outro for the team. But the question from Laura is, what are some ways that you fostered empathy between the main character and the player, like that sense of loneliness within Metroid?
It's actually easier than it looks. So there's a lot of games and a lot of movies go in for a lot of exposition, right? We're going to tell you what this character is feeling. We're going to show you what's happened or what happened before. And this is the reason that, and I'll use another pop science fiction analogy. So if you look at Star Wars, right? Episode 4, the original Star Wars film. I saw it the first day it came out in Augusta, Georgia, in 1977. There's a lot unsaid in Star Wars. What is the Force? It's a thing. Okay, it lets me do mystical wizard stuff, kind of. It influences, and this ghost can talk to me, right? Where'd it come from? We don't know. What are the ramifications of this in the universe? We don't know. Who's this guy in black armor? He killed your dad. And there was just like nothing else. And so you as a participant and as an audience member made this whole mythology. I mean, I went home in the back of my grandmother's Lincoln Town Car, and I had a little notebook, and I was drawing TIE fighters on the way home. I'm like, my brain was blown. I mean, I grew up on Star Trek, but oh my God, and I was making stories in my head, right? Because agency had been left to me. So when you're creating a creative product, you have to give the audience room to add a piece of themselves into the narrative. The reason that the Star Wars sequels and prequels fail, just like the reason the Aliens prequels fail, is the audience does not need to have what happened before explained, and they don't need to have all the little things, midi-chlorians or whatever. That takes agency away from the audience. So when you add those things in, you're destroying the personal mythology of everyone who loved your product to begin with. So looking at games like, I've had to re-envision a lot of classic IP in my career, whether it was Duke Nukem or whether it was Metroid or Donkey Kong or Doom, all those things. I didn't go to make a game like that other game, right? I went and said, how did people feel when they played this game the first time, right? What did they feel? And how do we set the situation in the game to allow them to feel that again? And if they feel that again, we win. The player wins, the audience wins, they become a participant in the game. And I think that's why Metroid Prime 3 is the weakest of the 3 Metroid games, is because our director decided he wanted to make a game more like Halo. And so he pushed really hard to make a game more like Halo. And it was a critical mistake. I'm like, Mark, we should not be doing this. You're taking everything away from Samus and the character that makes her unique. You're taking away agency from the player. Anyway, so that's how you get the player to emote. Think about how you want them to feel and set conditions to give them room to feel it. If that makes sense.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was a really great response. I mean, I wanted to have that question answered because it's so relevant to this challenge, right? All these insights that you're sharing. And this is, guys, why we thought, Mike was the right guy to tee this up. He talked to us about, his personal hustle to get to where he was and the different risks and challenges he took. He talked about team dynamics. He talked about the importance of game design and closed with this discussion of agency. All these different aspects are things that you're going to have to pull together, right, in the span of 24 hours. But you guys are doing the pre-work now to get some of these lessons learned up front. And so, again, this is the value and why we wanted to do this learning path. and why we want to have as many people involved is because we really want to give folks an opportunity to think about these things, think about these concepts that we're pulling together. So really thank you very much, Mike. And again, you know, if you guys have follow-on questions, lingering thoughts, please do email the gamejam@ba.com email address, and we'll answer those questions for you. I mean, that's absolutely why we're here. We really do want to engage with people. We want to hear from you. If you're nervous about an aspect of the challenge, things like that, just reach out. We've got a whole team monitoring. So really do appreciate that. Thank you so much, Mike.
Oh, my pleasure entirely. And I'm entirely serious. Go on LinkedIn and send me a connection request. It's all about who you know. And when you connect with me, you'll now know, I know Mr. Furukawa at Nintendo and everyone all the way down. I know the heads of Sony. I know the heads of Activision. I know all those people, right? So you connect to me, you'll know all those people too. It's that simple. And then if you have questions and stuff, you can ping me.
All right.
Thanks for coming.
So that was the immersive side of it. We did want to just park a little bit on the diversity, equity, and inclusion side of it because that is the other component of the challenge. So we do have some self-paced, right, modules for folks to look at. The first of the two is around molding AAPI consciousness, and it's a webinar by Kent Tong from OCA, who are based out of DC. That really just talks about, you know, the underpinnings of, you know, race and identity and some of those pieces that are going to be a part of the challenge. And so this is one of the homework assignments, if you will, but something that'll help you earn some leaderboard points. And again, for each of these, right, what we're asking is for the modules, just to take a look at the webinar and actually kind of reflect back on it. We're not asking you to write a 10-page paper or anything, just a quick, you know, what's your reflection, what's your reaction, what's your takeaway? How do you engage with this material? Because, you know, it's more than just the technical side. And that's why we've got, you know, this 12 August effort with Don Young to come in and talk about storytelling from an, you know, APA perspective. And so definitely encourage y'all to take a look at this. This was some content that was specially prepared for this game jam and a part of the other part of the challenge, if you will. So definitely, please do take a look at that. And we will be updating the website with the leaderboard and some of these materials. If you don't have the link, again, it's on the landing page. The calendar's on the landing page for you to be able to access these materials. And we will also provide, you know, information on the point structure and everything like that again, because we did not send these slides out ahead. But we really do hope for everybody to engage with this material over the learning pathway. And so with that, again, as you see, we're kind of in this first block here around the purple box. And that's really, you know, post-session, it's really, you know, hoping you guys get involved in the Unity essentials, you know, getting comfortable with the editor, you know, those things. And then we'll come back in 2 weeks for some hands-on on the Unity Asset Store and a couple of those pieces. So congratulations, we made it through the first segment of the learning pathway. We really do hope that you continue on with us. We want to see some new faces. As we were saying earlier, if you know some folks that might benefit from this, they don't have to be computer people. You know, feel free to bring a friend. And just a reminder that our next webinar is going to be on the 29th of July. Again, hit us up at gamejam.ba.com. We want to hear from you, questions, thoughts, anything, reflections. If you've registered but did not have a username, please share that with us. And if you did not register on the website and want to stay on the list for these sessions and information and things like that, please do go to the landing page and register. And again, help us spread the word. We want to get as many people involved in this as possible. I would say you guys all have an edge on your buddies because y'all get points for this. Y'all are on the board. So I think that's a good thing. You got a leg up on your buddies. But please do engage with us. We really want to hear from you. And thank you. Thank you for joining us. Any parting questions or thoughts from the group?
what a terrific career, Mike. Wow. just wow.
Thanks.
I'm pretty sure others are flabbergasted like I am. So to our students, again, hopefully you found it enjoyable as I did. Your leadership stories, I think that I took away quite a bit. So again, hopefully you students, you have such a tremendous asset here. It'd be crazy for you not to tap into a wealth of knowledge and drag some of your friends too and say, I got the chance to meet Mike. I heard from the man type of thing. So again, yeah, can't encourage you to spread the word and join us at the next one. So thank you. Thank you, Manjeet. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Brian, and the whole Booz Allen team for putting this on.
Thank you as well. Thanks everyone for spending
Thank
time.
you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, we'll see you all at the next session. And please do reach out to us